You are, as a gerontologist, you study aging, menopause, biohacking. I love all these things because these are things that us women living with diabetes are always trying to maneuver and bring in some things that are going to help us live better with diabetes. But it is funny because I have recently been using the term, you know how we just get used to terms that we use to describe who we help and how we help, but aging well with diabetes. So you instantly came into my circle because this is something that and it's just so important. As you can imagine, chronic disease has its own factors going on, and then we are still women and we are still obviously aging. Hopefully we're still aging, right? We're still here. And there's so many different layers to this. So I'm really happy to unpack this conversation with you today. What are you hoping our listeners who want to age well with diabetes walk away with today?
Well, yeah, aging is inevitable, but suffering is optional, right?
I love that term.
We don't, just whether you have diabetes or some other condition, we are going to age. It's a privilege to age. Like, I wish people would just get comfortable with their age and stop saying 40 is the new 60 or whatever that is. Just be 60. 60 is awesome. Like, and show us what 60 looks like. But it's not, aging is not a death sentence. I mean, we are going to die. We have to, understand that, but it's something that we can control the speed of. Usually, most cases, we have a lot under our control. And I'm sure you've heard the fact that, when the Human Genome Project came out and they found out that we have all these genes and they mapped it all out, that they figured out that we're actually some 20%. I've heard 10. I even heard less than 10% is due to our genes in terms of the diseases that we would get and die from, and then the rest, the 20% or 90%, whatever you want to call it, is actually lifestyle and diet. We can change. That means we can change our epigenetics. This is our genes behaving, how they behave themselves. So you have your genes thanks to your mom and your dad, but you also have the environment around you, and then you have things that happen. There's diabetes. I had osteoarthritis. Like, we're dealt some cards that we just have to deal with. But we have so much under a control. So I really want women to feel empowered during this time. And menopause is a time of opportunity. It's sometimes we're feeling like we're falling apart, like as if life wasn't hard enough already. Now we got our hormones going crazy. But now is a really good time to look at your diet and your lifestyle and your future. What do you want your future self to look like? Because we have a menu of choice. Unfortunately, we have a stereotype that we're always looking at: frailty and being overweight, or being sick, being in bed, being in a hospital. It's if you feed the algorithm in your Instagram of that, you're going to get plenty of it.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of difference.
I appreciate that. And something that I love about you too is that, and you just said it without saying the word, but stigma. Let's break the stigma. I think there's this understanding, and I think we tend to look at our mothers, our grandmothers, the older women in our life as kind of a model of what to expect. And we can almost get in a tunnel with that because we think that's inevitably going to be our path as well. So I love how you say, yeah, we do have choices. Something we definitely talk a lot about here on the show. A word I use, and you're welcome to take this because this is really important. It was a lady she's in the diabetes space, Riva. Oh my gosh, I can't think of her last name. But anyway, Riva Goldberg, I think is her name. And she said something that really, really makes a difference, I think, because in theory we can't control, but she used the word influence. What we can do to influence the outcome, right? It's a lot gentler. Yes. It doesn't sound so, oh my gosh, like we're hard on it. And it seems more adaptable, doesn't it?
Actually, that's a really good word, because controlling is more of it sounds more guaranteed. Like, we can control it and the outcome will be 100% guaranteed, but there are no guarantees. No. We can influence it. It's like our kids, we can influence them to make certain
Right.
decisions, but it is no guarantee they'll actually take our advice.
Perfect example.
Thank you. I'm going to read that.
Yeah, absolutely. So for women in midlife, which is, the area that you love to talk about, you're in midlife yourself, so you can obviously relate. That's why we do what we do, because we're here too, ladies. Inflammation is the first thing I think of. And we are reminded of this when we live with a disease, sugar. And I can't wait to hear you talk more about what sugar is doing to the cells and how we age. But I really think that's the root of all disease. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I can witness and see it in the world, and even within myself. 43 years living with an inflammatory disease has shown signs, and that's something I have to just kind of face and kind of deal with, and again try to influence what I can going forward.
Yeah. Inflammation is, everybody will have their take on what's the root cause of aging and what is it that we need to put out. Some people say it's inflammation. Some people say it's, we got to fix our telomeres. Other people say it's metabolic flexibility. Like it's all there. But we do know, it's that chronic inflammation has a major impact on our body. And inflammation in itself, as you know, is not a bad thing. We need it. If we get cut or something, we need our body to have the inflammatory response in order to heal. And if we put that fire out too fast or too soon, then you're not allowing your body to heal. So it's not that kind of inflammation that's bad. It's that low grade chronic inflation
That's the word.
becomes
Yeah.
a bit of a problem. And we don't feel it most of the time. Like we just we're used to it. We're like, it's normal to feel tired, or it's normal to have a little pain, or and to a certain extent maybe, but it should be a little bit of a warning sign. Like if you're day in and day out feeling all this pain and day out feeling fatigue, then that's a sign that maybe there's a little bit too much inflammation going on in your body. And on a cellular level, we know that there are certain things like the glucose, because we're going to talk about glucose here, obviously, because this is your jam. But those glucose molecules can get stuck in this sort of alarm mode and then affect I don't know if you talk about the advanced glycation end products, but these little proteins that get folded and they get stuck on your proteins. I'm not such a good way to, it's hard to explain the analogy, but it's more, we don't want to have these AGEs, which is such an appropriate acronym, AGEs, or advanced glycation end products, because they're binding to our cells, they're binding to these receptors, they kick and drive this inflammatory response off, and so they can injure some of your blood vessels, lots of other things. It's just a cascade of things that we don't really want to happen. And I don't want to scare people. We need glucose, right? We need to have some of it.
Right.
But it's, again, when they get into this alarm mode, this panic mode, then that's when the problems come. And then there's some oxidation that happens. And this is where the cells become oxidized. Maybe you've talked about reactive oxygen species, which is when our body just gets into this. Imagine a rusty nail, right? It's oxidizing, and it's just not good to be in this state, and it's affecting other cells. It can damage mitochondria, those powerhouses of the cells, can damage our DNA, and we have enough damage going on as it is. Like, we just don't need more glucose or more things creating the inflammatory response. Like, it's on overdrive. And so that's sort of kind of what's happening in the body. And we oftentimes don't feel that. We don't see it until you have a problem. And that's when you go to the doctor and they go, oh, okay, but if you want to go deep into the cells, there's so much science you can dig up and look into. But inflammation, sometimes we just go, oh, it's some pain or heat, but it's so much, there's stuff that's happening on the inside of the cells that we don't feel as pain and we don't feel as heat, but they're actually happening. And that's why is in a biohacker's world, we like to test, measure, and assess. We like to get data. We like to kind of see what's happening under the hood, despite the fact that we don't feel some certain symptoms.
Yeah. And you just pointed something out that just triggered an idea for some things that we're thinking about here in our community too. The overlooked symptoms that get blamed on aging. Well, I'm just getting older. This is what to expect, which is kind of how we, we're just referring when we first started talking today about looking at the generations of before us. But it really, I think, in essence, especially for women that are listening, and whether you have diabetes or not, but how related these are to changes in hormones. And I'm seeing that now. I didn't know this in my 30s and 40s. I didn't know the connection. I didn't even know I was in perimenopause back in the day. There wasn't much talk back, 15 years ago about really what to expect. But the overlooked symptoms that we can just kind of go to the doctor on, and everything's kind of treated in a silo. Nothing is looked at the full body, the whole body, but really what the underlying root cause is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where we get, it's a little bit harder, I think, for anyone with any kind of chronic disease, because you going through menopause, you're losing your hormones, your estrogen, your progesterone, your testosterone. Estrogen is an anti-inflammatory hormone. So it's normal, quote unquote, or common that have more joint pain or be more fatigued or have certain issues. But yet, if the root cause really is diabetes, or it's some other issue that a serious problem, or autoimmune, or the signs can overlap. But when you're going through menopause, a doctor who's well trained in menopause should say, okay, let's figure out your hormones first, I think, because then if it's not the hormones, if the hormones are not the root cause, at least getting them sorted out and balanced in the right place, wherever it is that you want them to be, then if that's not alleviating the symptoms, we know that's not the root cause, but it will support whatever measures that we are taking to help your heart, your brain, your blood sugar, whatever it may be. It's good to be in balanced and in a good space for whatever treatments you may need later. But so often it's the low-hanging fruit that can solve so many things. Not everything, but at least you get that sorted first. And then you can dive a little bit deeper.
Yeah. And you referred to looking under the hood, which is so important. You got to look at the whole engine, don't you? You got to look at all the parts that affect, the ultimately, how we feel. So let's talk about hormone replacement. I know you're an advocate. I am as well. We talk a lot about that choice that we can make for women, especially with diabetes, and how much it does help. The number one thing that we feel, I've experienced this now in retrospect when I go back thinking about when I approached menopause, the two things actually three, but the most dramatic thing was insulin resistance. So I was it wasn't suddenly, it was gradual. Thank goodness it was gradual. But when you are gradually needing more insulin to cover what you've always done. And if you're like me, a lot of diabetics, we tend to have to be routine is our friend for sure. So when your routine is no longer working and you're suddenly needing almost twice as much insulin to get through your day as you did, say, a month ago, 2 months ago, and it does that steady increase, you're putting on weight and you can't sleep. And those are common symptoms for a lot of women when the estrogen starts to fall. I think that's one of the good things living with a disease that has trackers, that we have levels that we have to look at. Obviously our A1C, time and range, looking at those blood sugar trends. So we do have that advantage because we're so close to the data. But I think there's still that disconnect with what hormones are doing to our body. And estrogen, the fear around hormones. This is something that you and I are both just trying to kind of dispel, within our communities and the women that we know. But what's the current science right now around hormones?
So I am a big advocate of hormone therapy, but I'm more of an advocate of informed consent, whatever that is, whether it's pro or against, or you should or shouldn't take the hormones. It's so individual. And I think there's one of the most important types of person who shouldn't be taking hormones is someone who's not convinced, who's worried, who's stressed, who thinks it's going to give them cancer. Like, definitely don't take this, because I always have a feeling the thoughts in your head can somehow manifest itself, and then you're going to blame the hormone. So you got to be really convinced and see if this is the right choice for you. And that's a discussion that you have with your doctor. But unfortunately, most doctors are not trained in hormones, they're not trained in menopause, so they don't give you the full picture on whether this is a good thing for you or not. And I always tell women, when you do go to speak to your doctor, ask about the risks versus the benefits of not taking hormones as well. Like, and for me personally, I just, my own story, I know what's going to happen if I don't. So that's kind of clear for me. Now, what will happen if I do? Maybe it'll be worse. I don't know.
Right.
But I'm going to certainly try. So I'm advocating for women just being informed and knowing, helping them make that decision for themselves. And in terms of the bad rap that hormones got, and you've spoken about this before, it's the Women's Health Initiative, which is a huge study. Billions of dollars went into this study. It concluded in 2002. Actually, it was stopped in 2002 because they saw some women having breast cancer, and in the end, that was what got leaked. It is the headlines, the sensationalist headlines that media always looks for is, oh, estrogen or hormone therapy causes breast cancer. Wow, that went like wildfire. But then they hadn't officially actually had the statement with the researchers making the statement that it does. And so by the time they looked at it and analyzed it and they said, no, actually it doesn't, that didn't make headlines. Yeah. And so that's why everyone is so scared. And everybody knows hormones are powerful. Right. So don't stay away, just stay away from that. Don't mess with that. That's, and I'm the first. My mother died of breast cancer. So I was been for years like, I will never touch hormones. That's not for me. Let's let my body do what it naturally does. Yeah. But if I'm been informed myself, I think I know what for me, again, I know what the best choice is for me, and I don't want to be convincing anybody to take hormones or not. It's just read up on it, listen to podcasts, read books, ask your doctor. If you know how to read research, go and pull out the research. And we have ChatGPT and Perplexity and all kinds of AI to help us sort through, and you can really plug in the data. Like, I want only these types of studies with these large cohorts or whatever it is, and then you can get the answers. And the more you research, the more you look into it, you will find the answer that's right for you. So I don't know if I went on a tangent and I don't know what question you asked me, but
yeah, no, that's okay. I completely agree with you. I think what's missed, especially with the WHI study, is that there was this conclusion that everybody still heard and is still. That's all they know at this point for many women. So I like the fact that, and there's a lot of great information coming out now. So trusted resources, shows like yours, Dr. Mary Claire, there's a lot of trusted experts in the field that we can look to. And sometimes we even have to take that information maybe to a doctor. And if our doctor's not willing to listen or have the conversation, then, it's real important to find somebody. But I love that. Sit in it, think about it. The risk reward is just so important. Yeah.
And think about if you are waking up with hot flashes, you're feeling miserable. This is a cascade of inflammation in the body. Yeah. This is not a good thing. Women who have hot flashes, the more they do, the more extreme they are, the higher the risk they are of all-cause mortality. It's it's heart disease. You're more at risk for heart disease. You're more at risk for dementia. So in fact, the quote-unquote risk of, we're talking about bioidentical hormone therapy, because now there's a whole other types of hormone therapy, is the risks are probably nothing compared to the risks of not doing something. That's why I say to ask the risk. And that's for the woman who's really, really suffering. But honestly, I always tell women in my podcast, and as I'm speaking, it sounds like a miracle, like hormones, it's just incredible. And when you hear the stories of women's lives are changed by it, you're just, oh my goodness. But at the same time, we have to take things with a grain of salt, because I always feel like science continues to evolve and it continues to change. And always take what you hear, whether it's from me or from you or from expert, like huge expert. We don't know if in 5 or 10 years time they're going to go, oops, sorry. Yeah. Well, the research now shows like that's the risk you take, whether you do something or you don't do something. We all want guarantees that we're not going to die or we're not going to get sick. But there are no guarantees in life. There are only one is guarantees that we will die. So we have to. Sometimes we get so wrapped up on death or not dying or avoiding illness that we sometimes we lose living our lives. We're not actually enjoying our lives and living it to their fullest.